Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Here we are again today to talk about cultivation of differences. And Marion had a point that she was talking about before we started the camera.
Well, as my children grew, they were different from each other, and I guess I cultivated some of their differences by allowing them to do different things, by not encouraging them to be the same every time or same as each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you recognized their differences, and you did what you could to encourage them to flourish in those differences.
Probably wasn't as good as you make it sound, but but I realize I did some of that, yes.
Yes, yes.
Well, I have two granddaughters, identical twins, that never wanted to be alike. And when they were about 5 years old, or 6 or 7, their parents gave them music lessons. One of them plays the violin, the other one played the piano for a while and dropped it, and instead played baseball. That's why I said, and she was the pitcher that they raised on their shoulders, kind of like your granddaughter, Anne, that really excelled at sports. And the other girl continued violin, and to this day, she plays the violin. She went through college and still plays the violin. She's in a little Irish band of some sort.
Oh, that's great.
But the other one does not play a musical instrument.
So
Never
that
had. And I think the differences were because they did not want to be alike. In this case of twins, they wanted to separate themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so cultivating differences, their parents let them wisely be different and not try to make them, oh, well, your sister has a skill, you need the same skill.
Right, right.
It's quite an interesting thing to watch those girls.
Yeah, I bet it is. And I think that there are situations where siblings are compared to each other and their differences not encouraged.
Right.
And that's really a sad situation to see.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts about cultivating differences?
I think it certainly takes a wise parent to recognize, just as Mary and you have, and your daughter has too, to notice those differences and acknowledging them in a good way, that the children are able to pick up on it and be happy with their different choices, their differences. I think that's hard as a parent to
So
do.
in cultivating, we're encouraging.
Encouraging the differences.
I also think it's difficult to be different from somebody else and encourage yourself to continue being different.
Wow, that's a very powerful point. How does one do that?
I don't know if one always does do that.
I think you're right.
I think one often backs down,
I think you're right.
just keeps quiet.
I think you're right.
Because they've been rejected with their differences, or not able to...
Maybe fear of rejection.
Or fear of rejection.
Yeah.
We're talking about children, but how about a spouse?
A spouse? I was talking about me then, as an adult, but what about a spouse? Being different?
Right. Could you encourage your spouse
To develop his own
to be different?
way of life. And
I suppose it, well, different, it depends on what you mean by different. Certainly my spouse was very different than I, and he had some very good traits that I didn't have, and I could appreciate those. But sometimes we had things that we were at loggerheads with each other. We were so different. So, I don't know what you do with all that. You can encourage some of it, but some are too destructive. Some differences.
Too destructive to you as a person, or to
the
the couple,
relationship,
the relationship.
yeah.
Maybe it
That's
gets
hard to
to the
figure
point
out.
of agreeing to disagree.
I don't think we used that term then, we didn't know it.
Or even a neighbor, you know, they're different.
They are.
And you have to, I don't know whether you can encourage their differences, but maybe when we're back to tolerance.
Respecting their differences,
That's true.
but not necessarily cultivating their
There's
differences.
been some talk lately on radio about how come we can't treat our spouse like we treat our pets, where we accept
Oh.
that dog that comes up and licks us all over and is so happy to see us when we come home, or the cat that slithers off and to be by itself. We accept that in a pet, but we don't always accept those things in a husband. We don't or our spouse or whatever. We don't accept their bad habits, but
Wow,
we accept them in an animal. That's kind of interesting to
Yes,
think about.
it is.
that is.
Sure, the animal can wet on the floor and you mop it up.
Again, we're tolerant.
Yes.
Well, I think that's all that we want to talk about cultivation of differences today. So join us tomorrow when we talk about invitation of dialogue.
Oh, my
Bye.
goodness, we're getting